Hello and welcome. This brief encounter is with books. I shall be recommending 5 fiction books for non-readers in this video. Starting with the first one, Gone Bamboo by Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain is not a fiction or a non-fiction writer. He was actually a chef based in New York who hailed from France. In this particular book, he's talking about a husband and wife, Henry and Frances. Henry, who happens to be a hitman, and his wife, Frances, let's just say she's no better. Henry was supposed to do a job on a man, and he was unsuccessful. When they come here to the island of St. Martin, where this story is based, as you can see from the image on the cover, there's flip-flops and sand. So it's a beachy story. When they move to the island of St. Martin, they are living in the Oyster Pond Hotel, which is the same hotel where Anthony Bourdain was living while he was writing this book. Henry and Frances's wife, Henry and Frances's neighbor, happens to be the very man whom Henry was supposed to do the job on. That man is now confined to the wheelchair. Because this book is written by a chef and not by a person who identifies as a professional writer, let's say Stephen King, Charles Dickens, Donna Tartt, the writing is a lot more geared towards people who like light reading. You don't really need to have a very great appreciation of writing styles to understand this book. It's not a very difficult book to understand. Not that Stephen King's books are very difficult to understand either, but the writing style is a lot richer in those books. And I'm assuming that people who don't read don't enjoy such rich writing styles, which is why Anthony Bourdain might be a good alternative. The story is wonderful, the writing style is simple, and the feeling that you get when you read the book is that of being on a vacation. That's probably one drawback. It might want you to go on a vacation to a lovely sandy place. When Anthony Bourdain wrote this book, in the preface he has mentioned that he wants people to get sand in these pages. So if you are planning to go on a vacation, please do carry this book with you. He's a writer who really does know how to convey things to the audience without making it difficult, without putting a lot of baggage on those words. He is a chef, but his writing is very, very impactful. Even his non-fiction works have an impact because he really is very observant as a human being, and you can see that in his writing. Remember, Gone Bamboo by Anthony Bourdain. The next book I would recommend is P.G. Wodehouse, Aunt's Aunt Gentleman. I would actually recommend any book by P.G. Wodehouse that has Jeeves and Wooster as their characters. Now, Bertie Wooster comes from a family of nobility, and Jeeves is his butler. Jeeves has more common sense and is slightly more intelligent, is more aware of what's happening in the world than Bertie Wooster. All of P.G. Wodehouse's books are supposed to have a satirical take on the British class system, the British hierarchy, and the British nobility, specifically their eccentricity and their fastidiousness in doing things, their strictness towards obeying rules of dress and style and the way they are supposed to do things. P.G. Wodehouse's writing is also very simple and it's funny. P.G. Wodehouse is the perfect example of the saying that it's not what you say, but how you say it that makes all the difference in the world. The things that he talks about, and if I was to narrate the story that his books are about to anybody, it would sound very unextraordinary, very bland, very plain, nothing remarkable in them. But there is something in the likeness of Rowan Atkinson or Jim Carrey or even Charlie Chaplin It's the way they say it, the way they do it, that makes all the difference in the world. It's the way that he tells those incidents that makes it so hilarious that we are transported into a different world where things are so distinct from our own, so different from the 21st century. And there's a lightheartedness and a hilarity in it. And not only because it's funny, but it's also funny because it's so ridiculous. We can see it, and the characters themselves cannot. If you would like a good laugh, and if you would like something that does not reek of the modern era, please do give this book a try. Next up, we have The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Another British writer I know. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a doctor, and he started writing stories about this very intelligent, this very smart detective whose name was Sherlock Holmes. In this particular story, the reason I recommend this particular book to non-readers is because one, Sherlock Holmes is a very interesting book because the writing is very simple again. It's a very intelligently written story. But I recommend this particular one because if anybody has not been introduced to Sherlock Holmes, this book conveys what Sherlock Holmes is all about without any of the weightage that usually accompanies the best work of any writer or any author. It is a very simply written story of a place called Baskervilles, which is being haunted by a hound. And it is being haunted by a hound because whoever inherits the Baskerville estate and the Baskerville title is killed by the hound. So when the last successor of the Baskerville estate finds out that his predecessor has passed away, was killed by this hound, and now he has to go and take over the Baskerville estate, he calls Sherlock Holmes and asks him to solve the case because his life is potentially in danger. And anybody who sees this hound describes it as a cross between creatures that don't exist in this world. I'm not sure if you can make out in the camera, but the image of the hound is glowing. The hound is more ferocious than any creature on earth. The hound is bigger, and it has a certain mythological appearance to it. Like it's a creature from a fantastical story. It cannot be real. This is one of those rare times when the detective is faced with a challenge that seems to be of another world, verging on ghost stories and the like. And he doesn't believe in ghosts. He's a very practical, scientific man. So this is a very, very good story for anybody who likes to solve puzzles, who also is someone who does not believe in ghosts, or you might, and you might want to find out how Sherlock Holmes deals with something that goes against every fiber of his being. The most important selling point of the story is the way that it is written. It is such an intelligent story, it is so incredible, and yet the way that it is written is so simple that even children can understand it, which I think is the most remarkable quality a book can have, that it can convey the depths of whatever it is that it is trying to say in a language that everybody can understand. And as you can see, it's a very small book. The story is such that it is going to draw you in. And because it is thin, you're going to finish it very fast. And it's going to leave you thinking and wondering. Definitely in love with Sherlock Holmes. Please give it a try. My next recommendation is going to raise a lot of eyebrows, but I'm going to stick to it. Dance, Dance, Dance by Haruki Murakami. I don't know how many of you know, but Haruki Murakami is a Japanese writer of world-renowned fame. He is considered to be an original writer in the sense that there aren't There isn't a single writer in the world, there isn't a single book in the world which can convey the same feeling that Murakami's books do. He's considered to be a writer that requires some time to get used to, even for people who do read. But I'm very firmly of the belief that it's not necessary that you have to be a reader to like Murakami's books. For instance, many people don't like fiction at all, but they love science fiction. In the same way, because Murakami's books are so different from the other books that we see, from other storybooks that we've read, I think there is a very great possibility that people who don't like to read the regular books that everybody else is reading might enjoy Murakami. And the reason why I recommend Dance, Dance, Dance is because it is the first book that I ever read by Murakami, and I was in high school, and I not only understood it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Which is why I believe that if there's anybody else who's a first time reader, they are going to enjoy it. There's no such thing as a book being too weighty. Let me explain Murakami's originality. Most writers start with a description of their protagonist, which is either physical or emotional. They describe how their protagonist looks or feels, or they describe what it is that the protagonist is looking at, looking for. Murakami begins his books in an entirely different fashion. Imagine being in a very intimate conversation with a close friend or family member about a strange experience that you've had or they have had, or a strange feeling that you have had. An example of that would be we all have had those experiences where we feel like we're not alone, even though we don't see anybody around us. Murakami begins his books from the middle of that conversation, from the middle of that intimate conversation that we are having with a friend or a family member. So the moment you start reading Dance, 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 we are thrust into this sense of intimacy where something very personal, very important is being revealed to us about the depths of the person. Not superficiality, not how the person looks or feels about something, but in a very real sense who that person is. And that is the beauty of Murakami's books. It's not completely joyful or full of grief or full of horror. It is about all those things because life is about all of those things put together. But I would still recommend Murakami to people who don't read because the way in which he writes is very easy to understand. There aren't any words that you would have to look up in a dictionary. And the story is that of people around us and people like us. There is an element of strangeness in it, but that strangeness is expressed in a way that is understandable, that we can grasp, that we can relate to. Because we all feel life is a little strange sometimes. We ourselves are a little strange sometimes. We all feel things that we can't explain. So there's nothing so out of the ordinary or something really unrelatable about Murakami. There isn't. There's a very great probability that if you don't like reading the generic books that everybody else is reading, you might enjoy Murakami. Please give it a try. My next recommendation, and the last one, is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a contemporary novel. This is the most contemporary novel out of all the five that I am recommending. And I recommend this because the writing style is the way that our generation speaks to each other and the way that our generation thinks. The story is also a reflection of our lifestyle, of our choices, of the way we look at life. It revolves around two friends, Marianne and Connell, who are living in Ireland. A large part of it is based in Dublin. It spans over a 10-year period, and during these 10 years, the nature of their friendship evolves and changes, and it talks about not only how these two people interact with each other, but in a broader sense, it is a reflection of how our generation interacts with each other. And again, this book is an original because of its writing style, because it is very straightforward. It tells us exactly what the character is thinking, why they are thinking that, and what they do after thinking that. Do they act on it or do they not act on it? The narrative alternates between Marianne's perspective and Connell's perspective. And as you can make out from the image, there are two people who seem to be lying inside a tin. And that's a very good depiction of what this book is about. There is also a TV show that is based on this book by the same name. And if you are skeptical about trying this book, you should definitely go watch the TV show. If you are someone who picks up a book and is constantly waiting for the writer to get to the point, and who gets bored when they describe the surroundings or the house, then you're going to like this book because it gets straight to the point. Please let me know if you would like me to read snippets from the book, because that can give you a very good idea of what it is about. For instance, it just talks about timestamps. It just gives you, there are no chapters. It says 3 weeks later, February 2011, and the next chapter is going to be, say, 1 month later, March 2011, or 3 years later, February 2014. So it's all very practical, very pragmatic, giving you just the information you need to know to understand the story, which is how our generation is. And that brings us to an end of this brief encounter with books. Please do let me know if you have read any of them. If you do read any of them and you like them or you don't like them, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful. Do subscribe and see you next time.